talk about how we can migrate ESXi host to utilize the vCenter distributed switch. We're gonna configure, create a distributed switch, and we are gonna migrate all the hosts to use that switch instead of the standard switch. That way we can manage all the networking straight from the vCenter instead of going individually to each ESXi host. As you can see, I already joined my 3 ESXi hosts to my vCenter. They are joined as individual hosts. It's not a cluster as of right now. It doesn't matter if you have a cluster created and you have the hosts part of the cluster. That is the same process to join it to the distributed switch. So let's start right away. We're gonna go to the networking tab in vCenter, vSphere client. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create the distributed switch. So we're gonna go to the data center and we're gonna right click and say new distributed switch. We're gonna name it. In my case, I'm just gonna leave it as is. We're gonna do the location is the data center. We're gonna say next. We're gonna specify or select the version. In our case is 7.0. I am utilizing vCenter 7.0 and ESXi 7.0 as well. I'm gonna click next. The number of uplinks is gonna be depending on the number of uplinks that you have on your physical servers on the ESXi host. In my case, I have 3 ESXi's and each ESXi has 4 uplinks. So that's what I'm gonna leave it as 4. I'm gonna leave everything else as is, except for I'm not gonna create a default port group because I'm gonna create them manually, and I'm gonna click next. This is a summary page. It's giving you some suggestions on what to do next, and then once you review this, you click finish. And we have the distributed switch with the uplink right there. If I go to my ESXi 2, for example, I'm going to refresh this. As you can see on networking, if I go to virtual switches, I only have the standard switch, vSwitch 0. And it has all the physical adapters assigned into it. So obviously by creating this distributed switch, it doesn't automatically assign it to the ESXi host. That's gonna be our next step. The next step is gonna be we're gonna assign this distributed switch to all my 3 ESXi hosts. The way we do that is by right-clicking on the distributed switch. And actually, before we do that, let's create some distributed port groups, right? So as you can see here, for example, on the vSwitch, we have some port groups created. We have a VM network with VLAN 100. We have a management network with VLAN 10, and the vCenter temp that I created to install the vCenter server with VLAN 10 as well. So we're gonna create some port groups like this, but in the distributed switch. So I'm gonna do new port group. The first one is gonna be management. I am gonna leave this as is. A port is should be enough for my case. The important thing is the VLAN, and it's gonna be VLAN 10. Other than that, we can go to advanced and check this and click next. Here you can tweak some settings, security settings, as you need or as you prefer, depending on your environment. Click next. the ingress traffic shaping and egress traffic shaping, you can modify either here as well. In our case, it's a lab environment. We're not gonna play with any of these, so we're just gonna leave it as is. All this is gonna be as is as well. We're not gonna touch any of this right now. It's gonna be later on. So we're gonna click finish. All right, we have our first port group created. Now we're gonna create another one. We're gonna create a VM network port group. We're gonna click next. Again, the important thing is if you don't have any VLANs assigned, you will leave it as none. But in my case, my VM's network or VLAN ID is 100. Here, obviously, you put whatever VLAN you have assigned to that port group. I'm gonna click next and finish. And we're gonna create one more. It's gonna be storage. For the storage, I have a VLAN ID of 200. That's where all my NAS storage server is residing in VLAN ID 200. So that's what I'm gonna do next and finish. Now that we have all three distributed switch that I need, obviously in your case you might need more, you might need less, it might be different settings that you need to configure, but this is in my case I'm just gonna show you what with all those three port groups. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna assign the ESXi host. We're gonna assign this distributed switch to all three ESXi hosts. The way we do that, we're gonna right click and we're gonna say add and manage host. We're gonna add host. We're gonna say new host and we're gonna select all three of my hosts. I'm gonna click OK. Next. Now this screen is asking you, or it's for adding and to manage physical adapters. As you can see over here, for example on ESXi 2, all 4 physical adapters going to the physical switch are assigned to vSwitch 0, right? So in our case, we're gonna assign some of those ports to the new distributed switch. Obviously, if you assign all 4 at once, you're gonna lose connectivity. So the ideal thing to do is to assign maybe 1, maybe 2, but you want to leave at least 1 of the physical switch assigned to the virtual switch for now, so that we don't lose connectivity. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna assign the last 2 ports of each ESXi host to the new distributed switch. So the way we do that, we're gonna select it, assign uplink, and we're gonna assign uplink 3 just to keep it like uniform, right? For example, VMNIC 4, if I say assign uplink, I'm gonna say 4. That way, you keep it uniform, but you can do whatever. You can assign it to whatever you want. And we're gonna say apply this uplink assignment to the rest of the hosts. Right? If we check that that box and click OK, you'll see that VMNIC 3 is assigned to on this switch, which is the distributed switch, on all 3 hosts. Right? All 3 hosts made that change. We're gonna do the same thing for VMNIC 2, assign uplink, and we're gonna say number 3 and check mark the box. Say OK. And as you can see now, ESXi 1 has VMNIC 2 and 3 is gonna be assigned to the distributed switch. 0 and 1 is gonna stay on vSwitch 0. Same thing for ESXi 2 and ESXi 3. So that's what we want to do. We want to leave at least 1 physical NIC to the assigned to the vSwitch 0. In our case, I'm gonna leave 2 and 2 for now. So I'm gonna click next, The next screen is to manage the VM kernel adapters. We are not gonna mess with this just yet. We're gonna do it by steps. The idea is to not lose connectivity to the vCenter, not lose connectivity to the ESXi hosts, and the way we do that is doing it step by by phases. So we're gonna leave this untouched for now. We're gonna click next, and for the migrate of VM networking, we're gonna leave it alone for now. So we're gonna click next. It's giving you a small summary of what you're doing. You are assigning or changing 6 physical adapters, right? Because 2 per ESXi host, that's 6 total. And we're gonna click finish. If we go to distributed switch, we go to configure and topology, we can see that these are the 3 port groups that we created, and we can see that uplink 3 and uplink 4, remember we did only 2 out of 4, we did the last 2, 3 and 4, now are assigned on this distributed switch to the ESXi 1, 2 and 3 on both uplinks, right? So we still have uplink 1 and uplink 2 assigned to the vSwitch, and if we go to the ESXi host, we're gonna refresh this, and we take a look at the networking. Now we can see that the distributed switch is assigned to this ESXi host as well as the other 2, and you see that there is 2 uplinks on each switch. So if we go to the distributed switch, we can see that we have 2 physical adapters connected to it. It's still looking right, showing like there is nothing because there is nothing connected to it. There is some distributed switch. There is some port groups assigned to it, but there is nothing on the port groups. So that's why it is showing that way. So let's go back to our vCenter. The next thing we're gonna do is if we go to the networking on the ESXi, we can see that under VM kernel NICs we have VM kernel 0, that is for management services, and it has the IP address of the management interface of the ESXi host. So the next thing that we want to do is to migrate this VM kernel to the distributed switch, and the way we're gonna do that is that's the next step. That's what we're gonna do now, and that way we're gonna keep connectivity to both the ESXi host as well as the vCenter. So let's do that. And the way we're gonna do that, we're gonna right click on the distributed switch and we're gonna go add and manage hosts. And instead of adding a host, we're gonna manage. Click next. We're gonna manage all 3. Click next. And remember this screen, we assign 2 NICs, physical NICs to the distributed switch and 2 to the V switch. We're gonna leave this as is for now. We're gonna click next. Now, this is the screen that we're gonna modify on this next phase. We're gonna assign this VM kernel from the V switch. We're gonna send it to the distributed switch. From V switch 0 to the distributed switch. So the way we do that, we select it, assign port group. We're gonna select management port group because the VM kernel 0 is on the management VLAN that we assign on that port group, and we're gonna say apply this to all ESXi hosts. Click OK, and as you can see, it's been reassigned from V switch 0 to the management port group on all 3 ESXi hosts. We're gonna click next. And the Migrate VM networking, we're not gonna mess around with this yet. We're not gonna migrate any VMs as of right now. We're gonna click next, and the summary page. Click finish. And it's thinking, and as you can see right here, the VM kernel has been reassigned to the management port group. VM kernel 10.10, VM kernel 10.20, and VM kernel 10.30. The way it works is we have 10.20 on our ESXi 2. 10.10 is ESXi 1, and 10.30 is ESXi 3. Obviously, depending on your IP addressing scheme, this is gonna be whatever IP address you have for the management interface on each ESXi host. So that's good. Now we have the VM kernel assigned to the distributed switch, and we didn't lose connectivity to the vCenter. We didn't lose connectivity to the hosts either. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna migrate the VMs. So currently, as you can see, I have the vCenter, domain controller, and Cisco ICE VMs. We're gonna migrate those to utilize the distributed switch. We're gonna migrate them into here, into these port groups. The way we do that is right click on distributed switch, add and manage hosts. We're gonna manage host networking, click next. We're gonna manage all 3 hosts, click next. We're still gonna leave all the VM, the physical NICs as is right now, 2 on the distributed switch and 2 on the vSwitch. We're gonna click next. The VM kernels is already migrated. We're gonna click next, and here on the Migrate VM networking, we're gonna click this box, and we're gonna migrate one at a time, right? So for example, vCenter, we're gonna assign port group, and vCenter is management. Why? Because vCenter is on the 10 network, right, which is my management network. So I'm gonna assign it to that management port group, and I click OK. DC1, the domain controller, we're gonna assign port group, and that one is gonna go to the VM network because DC1 is on the 100 network, VLAN ID 100, which is the VM network port group. I'm gonna click OK, and the ICE, I'm gonna assign port group, and I'm gonna send it to management as well because the Cisco ICE has a 10 network IP address and it belongs to the VLAN ID 10. So we're gonna put it on management. Click OK. Once you do that, all 3 have been reassigned. We're gonna click next. It's giving you the virtual machine adapters changes. It's gonna be 8 total, right? Because I have 6 on the ICE, 1 on DC, and 1 on vCenter. That's why it's 8 total. So we're gonna click finish, and it's loading, and it should assign the virtual machines to each port group. You can see the virtual machines have been migrated into the management, into the port groups belonging to distributed switch. As you can see, I have the vCenter on VLAN 10 is migrated. The DC1 is on VLAN 100, has been migrated. As you might notice that the ICE is not migrated. It should be here under VLAN 10 on the management port group. The reason for that, I believe, is because I'm currently migrating the ICE into a new storage. So that might be the reason that it's not migrating to this port group as of right now. Once this is completed, I probably only have to go back and do it again only for that virtual machine. But we're gonna continue. This is the same process. Obviously, this wasn't running right now. The ICE will be part of this management group, port group right now. All right, so we have we created the distributed switch, we created some port groups, we migrated two virtual NICs, we migrated two physical NICs, we migrated the VM kernel, management VM kernel, and we migrated the virtual machines. The only thing that is left to be done is to migrate these two physical NICs, and that's what we're gonna do next. As you can see, if I click here and uplink 3 and 4, they are handling all the data, they are handling all the traffic, so as well as these guys. But if by assigning these and interrupting the connectivity on these two physical adapters, it's not gonna lose connection to anything, because these two physical adapters are gonna be able to handle it. So we're gonna do that, and we should be able to maintain connectivity. So we're gonna right click on the distributed switch, we're gonna add and manage host, we're gonna manage host, we're gonna manage all three hosts, and click next. And here the physical NICs 0 and 1, we are gonna pass it into the distributed switch, from this switch 0 into the distributed switch. So the way we're gonna do that is the same way. We're gonna select VM NIC 0, we're gonna assign it, and we're gonna assign it to 1, uplink 1, and apply this to all ESXi hosts. Click OK. And VM NIC 1, we're gonna do the same, assign it to uplink 2, apply to all ESXi hosts. And as you can see, VM NIC 0 and 1 have been assigned to the distributed switch in all three ESXi hosts. So we're gonna click next. We're not gonna have to do anything with VM kernel. Next. No migration of the VMs, we already did that. Click next and click finish. Now we should see the physical adapters moving into here. And there it is. We have a uplink 1 handling or assigned to all three ESXi's, and uplink 2 assigned to all three ESXi's. If I go to ESXi 2, for example, now, and I go to virtual switches and click on a distributed switch, as you can see, it already has all 4 links, and the vSwitch has 0 links, uplinks. And the distributed switch, as you can see, has all 4 VM NICs that are connected into the physical switch. One more thing that I want to mention before we complete this video is how you should have the physical switch configured in order to be able to do all this that we just did. And as you can see, everything is going through the distributed switch now. So I'm gonna go to my physical switch. And I'm gonna show you the configuration for the switch ports that I have, so that you don't lose connectivity while doing all this migration. So for example, ESXi 3 is connected to switch port 9, 10, 11, and 12. So if I do a show run interface 309, make this big, 09, 10, 11, and 12, you see that all three switch ports are trunk. They are allowing my 3 VLANs, and they have an encapsulation of .1Q. It is important that you configure the switch ports the same, and they are a trunk and they allow the VLANs that you want to pass through that trunk. So that way, when you are doing all the migration, you don't lose connectivity. For example, if 12 have interface 3012 as a access switch port, and it is only allowing VLAN 100, for example, and then you go ahead and you migrate all the other 3 ports to the distributed switch. Now you only have interface 3012 allowing VLAN 100 assigned to the vSwitch. You're gonna lose connectivity, right? Because the vSwitch has only, at that point, the vSwitch is gonna only have one physical NIC going to it, and that physical NIC only allows 100 VLAN. So the VLAN 10, that is the one that the physical NIC needs to maintain connectivity to the ESXi host, is gonna be lost. So in short, I believe that the easiest way to do it is to make sure that all your physical ports going to the ESXi's are trunk, and that they are allowing the VLANs that you need to allow to maintain connectivity. And that's it. For the next video, I'm gonna show you guys how to create a link aggregation for going from the vCenter to the physical switch, and how to do it in a way that you will not lose connectivity, just like we did just now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up, and see you next time.